All right. We're here in Pittsfield, SpartanUpPodcast.com. I've got Colonel Nye on my right, Dr. Johnny on my left, and the wilderness wild woman who hates acupuncture, Sephra, all the way down on the end.
I was thinking it's probably time I throw in the caveat that I'm not a real doctor. Joe calls me the doctor because I seem to help people with some of their issues some of the times.
That's what a doctor does.
I'm a real life doctor.
He's a holistic doctor. And just so you know, you touched me. Your hand was warm. So you're like...
doing something right.
So we're going to talk about Kodak and Jeff Clarke. And he's fantastic.
Didn't they go broke? Kodak?
Eastman Kodak went broke. Jeff is bringing it back from the depths of destruction, if we can call it that.
Spartan
right? It was the number one brand in the world, bigger than Coca-Cola, and it failed. Why did it fail? It's hard to be on top, whether you're a wrestler, military guy, wilderness woman. It's even harder to stay on top. How does the number one brand in the world go bust?
It didn't adapt.
It
You're
didn't
right.
adapt, yeah.
That's what the issue was. It didn't see change.
But we got to watch it. And we'll see what the hell he's going to do to turn this thing around. Super interesting for me. The island that we get to interview him on is awesome. We'll talk about that. And
is it his island?
We'll find out.
I love Island.
And no, you're gonna love this.
What I'm looking forward to seeing is the idea of somebody going into a company that's at the bottom. You know, we all want to go to the successful ones. It's like a fireman running into a burning building. So I'm curious to see what makes him want to dive into something so challenging.
Me too.
Yeah, he's diving in. I'm here on the island. I meet Jeff Clarke 90 days into his position as CEO of Kodak. Kodak, one of the greatest brands in American, maybe global history. We've got to talk to him.
Thanks so much.
How you doing?
Great to see you.
Thanks for sitting down. So tell me about your first 90 days at Kodak, and then we'll get into some of your other great successes.
Well, it's been a Spartan moment, I'll tell you that. It's the company has enormous history. The brand is so important, 99% unaided recognition. Yet it's a company that went through bankruptcy. It's a company that is in turnaround. It's a company that had over 100,000 employees, and now we have 8,000 employees.
Massive job. Why would you possibly take this job? I looked up some of your history. You've been enormously successful. You don't need to work. Why'd you do this?
Well, I think, why do people do a Spartan race? I mean, people do a Spartan race because it challenges them. It tests them to their greatest endurance. What this is the opportunity to take something that needs enormous help, yet has great underlying strengths, and accent those strengths, build that muscle back, and drive the company forward.
When you did the analysis and made this decision to leave California, you've got young children, go tackle this project, you looked at the brand name and how powerful it was. As recognized as Apple, more recognized, less recognized?
Well, I think Apple has been probably one of the iconic companies, and certainly one of the most successful companies in the last 30 years. And it revolutionized computing, which is a device that most of us carry in our pockets. Most of us used to carry a Kodak camera in our pockets. So there's enormous parallels to great companies that transcend being a corporation and become something people love. And when I talk about Kodak to consumers or companies or filmmakers, they think of it in reverent terms. And so Kodak has created industries. Apple does that today. And we continue to hope and are working, all the time right now with all of our energies to try and bring Kodak to the point where we are changing industries the way that Apple is able to today.
Just curious, what age would not know Kodak? When did Kodak kind of fall off that cliff?
When I told my dad I was taking the job, who's 82, I'm taking the job at Kodak, he said, "Wow, what a gigantic job. That's fantastic. One of the great companies in the world." And I told my 12-year-old daughter, and she said, "What's a Kodak?" Right. So Kodak has been incredibly relevant for people, who grew up with film. But many people today with digital technologies, they think of cameras as their phone.
Sure.
And as such, Kodak has lost that important place. But we've migrated to more to different things.
So I know the camera,
Sure.
right? And then it became the throwaway camera. For a while, it was film. Was film the main business?
Yeah, film is now 10% of Kodak's business. At one point, it was 80%. And all of the derivatives of film, the chemical business, the healthcare business, it all came from that original innovation around film.
Around film.
Just to give you a sense of how digitization has changed, and I think it's relevant to so many different industries, because so many industries are being disintermediated in the Schumpeterian creative destruction. This concept that the world's markets change and technology changes drives change. Just 5 years ago, Kodak sold just to the motion picture industry 12 billion linear feet of film. That's enough to circle the globe 88 times.
Wow.
We're now only 4% of that. We're down to 600 million linear feet of film. And that change is the changing of an art form, because film has, depending on how you measure it, 8 times the resolution of the best digital camera. It has this incredible artistic ability. One filmmaker said it better than I ever could. The difference between film and digital is like going to the Louvre and looking at an oil painting and then looking at a print and asking, can you see the difference? Of course you can. Film is analog. Our eyes are analog.
Right. So is that what ultimately broke Kodak? The fact that were they using film and all the revenue from film to pay for all these other businesses?
Kodak has had enormous transitions, as any century-old company has. Almost any business that is going to lose 90% of their largest business is going to have a lot of transitions to do. Just on the manufacture of film, at one point, there were 30,000 people manufacturing film just in Rochester, New York. Now we have 300.
Wow.
So it's a massive change.
Where do you think it goes? It's just basically digital? What gem do you see there in those first 90 days that's going to transform this company?
Kodak has 7,500 really relevant patents built over the last century, from chemicals and applications around film that are much broader than taking pictures. And these underlying technologies allow us to do many new things. On top of that, we have hundreds of PhDs. We still spend $100 million a year on research and development each year. And what we try to do in research and development is very different than many other companies in the industry. What we try to do is we try to do the most advanced areas. We try to push the research to the cutting edge. And the reason we do that is because Kodak has capabilities in the research that isn't kind of copying other people's products and making them better, which is an important part. It drives costs down. What Kodak does is it keeps pushing to new frontiers. One of the frontiers is the one I mentioned earlier, which is around printing things on film that are conductive. And
like the touch screen that we dial on our phone.
Exactly.
So you can print that now.
You can print that now, and by printing that and applying conductive elements like silver or copper, you allow that to be a more efficient touchscreen at a lower cost than when you're using the current technologies today.
Metals.
But we've got many other applications. We're really excited about microfluids as an industry going forward, and we're investing a lot in that. And
I'm always thinking about microfluids.
Yeah, it's one of the things.
Fill me in on microfluids.
So think of photographic paper. Photographic paper is a specialized paper that allows it to turn into a picture. Well, what about creating paper that allows other things to be found on it, such as if you apply some saliva to that paper, then you can test many different things about your health. And you can do it in a way where you don't have to go to a lab and have someone jab a needle into you.
That's interesting.
And so what we're working with the healthcare industry, we're working with these microfluids to be able to print on that paper sensors and different chemical elements that allow saliva and other fluids to be applied to it, and then you can learn about your health.
That would be incredible if like during a race, right? You can literally put a little saliva on a piece of paper and find out, you know what, I'm low in magnesium right now.
And another applicable thing for those of us who run and work out, we are able to, Kodak has a great history of silver. Silver is the key element within photography, and we have been able to break silver down into the nanoparticles. and then embed it in clothing. And it allows you to wear your clothes, and those clothes don't have the odor that you typically get after a Spartan race.
What was really interesting you said to me was you've still got all these PhDs. I would
Right.
think a company that's in a turnaround mode would have cut R&D completely.
It is a different structure than many companies have. Many companies try and make modest refinements to each of their products. We have longer product cycles, more ambitious research goals, and that is part of the innovation and cultural history of Kodak.
It reminds me, anytime I get a chance to talk about the cookie test, the 1972 Stanford researcher did on children, I love to. And so what you're telling me is you don't take the cookie now as a company, right? Because the cookie now would be, let's just efficiently produce this, blow it out, and make some money. You guys are just pushing the edge and trying to get 15 cookies later.
It's a perfect analogy, and I'd love to say that's what we do all the time. The fact is, sometimes you have to have a couple cookies along the way. In this case, to continue to build consistent overall economic performance. But as a company, if you really want to strive to make the company great, you have to put a portion of your budget. For us in research, out of the $100 million, it's over $30 million. Very few companies will spend 30% of their research budget on advanced technologies. So
Stuff that may not...
stuff that has much higher risk profiles and much higher reward profiles.
I hope you're not sitting still while you listen. If you are, you better get a burpee break in.
The company acts like a Spartan, right? You're at the forefront, you're pushing the limits. You personally, how are you getting through this? I mean, you've had those successes, you worked really hard for most of your life. You've got your children, you're flying, you're on the road most of the time. How are you staying healthy? What's your routine? What do you do?
Well, I think over my life, I've had over 3 million miles on commercial airlines, and there are lots of techniques you have to do as an executive or a road warrior per se. One is when you go to a new time zone, move to that time zone, and the best way to move there is physical activity. So don't sit down and have a meal. Go work out right away.
As soon as you land.
As soon as you land, if you can schedule your calendar so you can do that, it's important. Particularly when you're going multiple time zones. So if you go to Tokyo, typically you'll leave and you'll arrive 7 or 8 at night. You're not going to sleep that night anyway. So go work out for a couple hours. Make sure you get that in, and then the food you eat. I mean, you have to be absolutely critical that you avoid comfort foods that your body craves during a period of stress.
Right.
And the working out for me does a series of other benefits that are, I think anyone who's run a Spartan realizes. It clears your mind, it reorders your mind. For me, the workout process helps my processing through of information. And so I find after a good workout, I've reprioritized and thought a lot about, much of it subconscious. All of a sudden, as you move from a workout back into that post euphoria you have after a good workout, your mind, at least my mind, starts working a little differently, and I find myself to be sharper.
Sure. And so for me, it's meditative, right? When I go out and do my burpees or run, and so you've got a million things going on in your mind. You're flying all over the world, and you're done working out, and then what? You hit paper and pen and just...
Yeah, I mean, I think I like to get ideas down. I do that in the way it works for me is since I grew up using paper and pen, that is a way that improves memory. I imagine children today who grow up more on devices, they'll hit their phone and have the same memory learning process. But for me, I do that. I also like to engage very, very quickly with people. I like to take some quick calls, get updates, and kind of get back in that mode post-workout, back into
right in the game.
back into the game, and get my my
you
people moving.
You hit on something interesting. So a lot of executives I see, I don't know if you agree with this, they do really well. They grow their company, they get paid, and then they're out of shape and they're dead, right? And I bet, I don't know if anybody's ever done a study, but I bet there's a high correlation to being completely successful and completely out of shape. You're obviously not following in those footsteps. What would you say to those executives? I would just imagine they'd be more successful if they stay fit. And is it the stress, you think, that then drives you to not be fit?
Well, I think there are lots of rationalizations why people don't take care of their bodies. And it's hard for me to believe that anyone in any job can't dedicate 30 minutes to an hour a day. Even if you have 3 children, as I do, you need to make that a priority so you'll be there when your children are older.
All right, let's talk about mine and your chubby days. I was not always fit. A lot of people email us at Spartan and say, Joe, how do you stay motivated? Have you always been this way? And the fact is, I went off the rails. I was on Wall Street for a little bit. I'm sure you must have had something like that happen to you with all the business success you've had. So,
yeah, I think like most people, you're indestructible in your 20s, right? You can stay up late, you can work around the clock, hard work, hard play, and you can not eat as well and eat too much often. And then all of a sudden your 30s kick in, and you probably, and most people as their careers move on, they get either more responsibility or at least more stress. And what I found was when I hit 40, I started to gain weight. I gained about 20 pounds. And it was really, I was drinking fizzy drinks. I was eating too much red meat. I ate a lot of vegetables, but it didn't stop me from eating other things as well. And I think what really happened was it was a fascinating time. I was on a mountain. We were doing a research lab retreat for Hewlett Packard, and we went up to a heavy elevation. And of course, when you go to higher elevations, you need to replenish. And rather than grab that fizzy drink, my wife said, "Why don't you try water?" And I picked up the water, and literally haven't had a fizzy drink
never went
since.
back.
Yeah. So for the last 15 years, the liquid of choice is water, and it's so refreshing, and I love it.
sodas are, we had a guy compete in a Spartan race at 696 pounds.
Oh my goodness.
I helped get him down to 240 pounds, and it was all driven by Sprite. He would drink 2 liters every morning.
Wow.
So people don't realize how unhealthy soda is.
I think it's important that leaders mentor their employees. So when I see an employee who may be hitting it out of the park in terms of the execution of his metrics and beating his numbers, if I see that employee, either in an incredibly stressful situation, it's important that you as a leader coach them and say, you can accomplish all this and still have more family time, right, and still have more time that you can be more balanced in your life. And so I've had several mini interventions with some of my executives around, I love what you're doing, but I'm scared about the track you're on a personal development level.
Last question. We've got a ton of military that watch us, special forces. We've got a partnership with, believe it or not. And a lot of these guys are coming back, and women, and they're looking for positions. Kodak is on its way, knock on wood, to being a giant company again. Is that an area you focus on? Would you take some of those people in?
Absolutely. I think there are many things that you can do around philanthropy, and clearly one of the things that you need to do is to try and hire your most qualified people. And without question, some of the most qualified people in the world are military veterans. But I believe we should do more. So I was inspired by a Center for Investigative Reporting article by the chair of that organization, Phil Bronstein, a legendary journalist. He wrote a story on, which was about a year and a half ago in Esquire magazine, and that story was titled "The Shooter," and it talked about how one of the leaders of the very important SEAL Team 6 mission that successfully solved Al-Qaeda, Osama bin Laden situation. He, after 14 years of intense service, decided that he needed to retire. And the way the structure works, it was very difficult for him to find a job and even to get benefits from our veterans organization.
Somebody at that high level.
At that high level, that the person who has put his
life on the line.
Life on the line, who has arthritis in his neck because of the heavy night vision goggles that he carried into so many missions. So when Phil wrote this, I was inspired, and so Phil and I met with the shooter, and many of the other people from that mission and some other colleagues. And we started a new charity called Your Grateful Nation. And this is designed to bring special forces, the people, the Spartans of our military, the people who do the hardest jobs. Everyone in the military does an critically important job. These are the ones often
Tip of the
at the
spear.
most risk.
Yeah.
And we need to make sure that they get the right jobs. And this organization is set up specifically to work the transition back and to get corporations like Kodak and others to make sure that they are interviewing these people and feeling the responsibility to get these people's jobs. They're incredibly talented
So
people.
how do our viewers, how do they find that organization?
YourGratefulNation.com. It's also YourGratefulNation.org. You can go on the website. You can learn a lot about the organization. Thanks
for doing this.
Great to meet you.
Wow, so I learned a lot. He really is adapting, and I think like the whole micro silver, the no odor in your athletic clothing. Joe, your idea about being able to lick the paper and see what you're low on, magnesium, potassium.
Yeah.
It's great to see how his creative brain is going to adapt his company, and I think they'll be really successful.
We talked in an earlier podcast about when do you know it's time to quit and when do you know it's time to adapt.
Right.
And this is a great example of that, right? You talk about Kodak, who was so successful, and then it got to a point where it really was essentially bankrupt. And they're not quitting. It's not like Kodak doesn't exist anymore. They're completely adapting and changing everything. And it seems like the right guy for the job. Pretty incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love what you said before about running into a burning building. Your reputation's online. He's had tremendous success in his life. And I was talking to his wife after the interview as to why does she think he's successful. And in college, she said he used to, during breaks, go to his grandmother's house, and they had the old, what were those typewriters called? The Selectrix typewriters. And he would sit there and bang out his entire semester of term papers and things that were due during those vacations while everybody else went and had fun, went down to Mexico, whatever they were doing. So there's a guy that really is committed and just...
And that theme about working on vacation carried through to this interview?
That's right.
Is that
well,
what
he
was going on?
he had a day off, apparently. Shot down. It was not his island we were on. It was Richard Branson's island. And I was amazed that they even had the time to spend with us because he only had the day. He was down there to see his wife, and then he was back to Rochester, New York, which is a pretty far cry from where they live in California. So I don't envy the guy. I mean, his reputation here is if this doesn't work, right?
Yeah, but doing the interview with you proves he identifies opportunities and it seizes opportunities. So he had to know a little bit about you and what this could do talking to you. So he wanted to help you, but he also knows that that's going to help his company.
I mean, the public wants to know what's happened
right,
with Kodak.
but you both seize an opportunity, and that's what makes good entrepreneurs, right?
That's
So
right.
You saw an opening, you saw a moment, you came together and you produced this thing.
Like a wrestler.
That
Or like you, Joe.
Here's my time to shoot.
right.
Time to shoot.
I mean, but that's good, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so even on vacation, he's looking around, and when he sees something that's going to be advantageous,
He jumps on it.
He jumps on it.
But
And
that's a good distinction too, because there's the unhealthy workaholic who just can't stop working, and it's actually an affliction, right? They're on vacation
Right.
and they can't enjoy it because they're working. Very
That
different.
might be me, by the way.
Well, sometimes maybe, but at the same
You have great
time,
family time.
if you're looking at then how to adapt that, it's enjoying whatever you're doing. So here's a guy who's enjoying his time on the island, gets asked to do this interview, and goes, "Yeah, I'm going to do it. And I'm going to enjoy it." And when he's with his family, he's enjoying that too, right? So there's something to be said for being productive and finding opportunities, and then enjoying that opportunity, rather than just being blindly driven that all you know how to do is work and you can't enjoy anything else. So it really struck me this is a guy who has a joy for life, which he's using to make this successful.
To get it done.
Well,
What'd you like? You like the silver in the clothing, the little silver.
Yeah,
It's a spray.
colloidal. It's like colloidal silver or something like that. I think it's really interesting, right? Because sometimes people around here in Pittsfield, maybe in Pony Barn or something, they could probably use a little micro silver in there.
I don't think Joe has it
Being
on his
dirt-
shirt today.
Yeah, exactly.
That's probably right.
No, I mean, I can only imagine, these races that go 400 miles, 4 days, whatever. Something that's antibacterial, antimicrobial in your clothing is brilliant. You know,
Yeah,
And
having been through a
like-
bunch of death races, we need
Yeah.
Kodak to sponsor them. It is one
Spartan should
rough smelling here at the end.
Yeah. No, and we are actually talking to Kodak about
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
putting the silver into the clothing
Yeah.
and the film. Did you
Yeah.
wasn't that interesting?
Wait, what
Nobody's making film anymore except for Kodak, and so he had a big meeting with Spielberg and a bunch of guys out in Hollywood to try to save film because damn it, Pulp Fiction, who was the
Quentin
Tarantino.
Quentin
The
Tarantino
guy
basically
I've met him,
said
actually.
said to Jeff Clarke,
Yeah.
if you stop making film, I'll never make another movie.
Yeah.
And so
Way to go, Quentin.
he rounded up a bunch of these guys, and they all committed to putting some money in and saving film. Otherwise, it would just all be digital.
Yeah, what did he say? He said that the actual resolution is 40 times higher than the best digital because it's analog and we're analog.
Yeah, isn't
Yeah.
that amazing?
That's incredible.
Yeah, you know, there's something to be revered about the past. You know, it's like the written documents. You know, they go by the wayside with email and things like. There's a lot of like romanticism, especially for artists. You know, that these huge companies. I think when he said it's interesting, like our grandparents, right? Everyone knows who Kodak is, and the younger generations don't. And it's amazing to see as an entrepreneur and as a business owner how quickly you can go from being that fad to not. And once again, I mean, what we've been saying here is that adaptability, that resiliency. And you guys are talking about he's present and he's calm and he's able to, you know, absorb the great ideas that are around him. And that's really a good technique.
Yeah, and just because you're on top doesn't mean you're going to stay on top. Like, you know, I know that's a huge part of your drive in Spartan is, guys, this is great that we've made it, but we
keep going.
we can go down the tubes pretty fast.
And it's quickly like the leverage. I don't know if you guys use that word a lot, but in business, like the airline business, let's say they're highly leveraged, right? So if they had a week of no bookings, they're out of business.
Yeah.
Like it's that sensitive, and it's the same thing with Spartan Race. We've got 300 people now around the world, and we depend almost like coal that goes into the fire to keep the ship moving for those registrations every day to keep that thing going, and so it's very leveraged and very sensitive to.
Yeah, but you're morphing and changing every day.
Yeah.
Every day. I mean, this podcast is a great example. I mean, you are looking almost hourly at how to expand, how to get better, how to do things, how to reach out to more people. There was years ago, I think in the early 90s, there was an Army general, and we were going through a transformation. He said people fought it because people always fight change. If you don't like change, you're going to love being irrelevant.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's it.
Yeah.
If you can't keep up and you can't make these adaptions, get out of the way.
And that's what happened
coming.
to Kodak. Kodak actually invented the digital camera, but they screwed it up.
Because it threatened their own business model, they wouldn't
Yep.
embrace it.
Yeah,
Right.
screwed it up.
Well, my favorite email that I've gotten the last week was from the company, and it said, on the heels of our most successful year ever, we're going to scrap all of our obstacles. Right? Like, not all, but I mean,
Yeah.
we got to start again because the idea we want to stay totally relevant and totally fresh. So I thought that was great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I mean, Joe, I mean, any of you Spartans who have met Joe, you're unbelievably good at identifying opportunity and and seeing the best in people and seeing their potentials. And I
All right,
think
you'll be
it's
on the next
leaders.
podcast. You made it for one more podcast.
Well, you
Got it.
definitely identified a great guy in Jeff for that interview. I really enjoyed that.
Jeff was great. Spartan Up the podcast. You'll learn more. You can check out the show notes. We have an interactive division.
Spartan Up podcast.
Spartan Up podcast.
You can go to Spartan Up the podcast, but it's not going to bring you anywhere. You go Spartan Up podcast to get you there. Colonel Nye has built, feverishly working at night, an interactive section where you can.
I thought there was one.
Where you can send
We
in
need
notes.
one. We need one.
You can send stuff in. Somebody may or may not get back to you. We're not sure,
right.
but
Do we have an IT section?
we have an IT.
Maybe they're listening.
Yeah, but I don't know. Anything else? We're good.
No, it's
You're good.
fantastic. I'm enjoying this. This is a great podcast.
Yeah.